BC Parks program. And we certainly appreciate the chance to talk to you about this. The last time I spoke to the Society was, seemed like it was ages ago. It was in the days when we used to all be in one room. And it was Birders Night, actually. So this is a somewhat different topic. And the project we're going to describe is a collaboration with BC Parks. We've had funding support and many other forms of support, as well as some help from the BC Parks Foundation. And then, of course, our two universities and various support people there. And it also involved support from a cast of thousands, literally, as you'll see in a moment. So, okay, so we can go to the next slide, please, Brian. And so the objectives of this program, which started 3 summers ago, is first of all to improve our inventory of BC's provincial parks. And so if you include provincial parks, conservancies, and ecological reserves, there's in fact 1,034 of them. And that's an awful lot of real estate, which clearly the staff are not going to be able to inventory on their own. And so this is where we're harnessing the power of community science to try to enlist many, many pairs of eyes in a very fun way. And so the idea is to improve the inventories, to also to help provide fundamental data to understand some important changes, such as range shifts, especially threatened species, and also invasive species. And along the way, it's a great public engagement tool. And so we're hoping that we can, you will help us to spread the word about how much fun this can be as a great way to spend time. Okay, next. So I'm going to give you a little introduction to iNaturalist. I know some of you, looking at the chat, I know quite a few of you do use it and are familiar with it, but I still might be able to show a few people, some of you, a few things that you weren't aware of. And for the rest of you, I'm just going to give you a little run through of the site and show you how it works. We're using iNaturalist for a few reasons. First of all, here's the growth in the use of the platform. So you can see the millions of observations that have been collected just in the last 5 years. It's nearly doubled last year alone, and it's really sort of taken off. It's been around for about just over 10 years, but it really got going just really in a big way only in the last 4 or 5. It's run by the California Academy of Sciences in collaboration with National Geographic. And so they have made this free app available, and you can have a version on your phone if you want to use your phone for taking the photos and uploading through your phone. And of course, it's also a website that you can log into from your laptop, and you can upload from there. And I'll show you how that's done in a moment. Okay, and I think at that point, I think Brian, I'll take the screen, and I'm going to just take you straight onto the site. Okay, is that, you can see the map? Okay, right, great. So here's the site. So now I'm directly on their website, and you can see that as of this moment, they've had over 61 million observations. And interesting thing over here is what I love. It's 1.5 million people have used it, have uploaded to the site. And here's the map of locations. The red squares mean that something has been uploaded to the site. It is a map-based system, and it's photo-based, and also they can do audios as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take you through a couple of the main tabs, actually, the Explore and Observations and Community ones. And Phil, if you're still, if I haven't put you to sleep yet, Phil, if you want to unmute and put you on the spot and ask you to name a species, any kind of plant or animal species at all.
Pycnopodia Helianthoides.
Okay. You're not very nice. I love them. I've never seen one. Pycnopodia. Oh, wait, Pycnopodia, and there it is.
Yes, that's it.
All right, thank goodness. Sorry, actually, I was thinking of something else altogether. Of course, I've seen sun stars. So here's the distribution of them. You can see it's very much a West Coast thing. So these are the observations that have been put into it. it's of a great deal of interest right now because there's a wasting disease, which has caused them to be recently declared to be in danger of extinction by the global red list people. And it's also on COSEWIC's radar, the committee that I'm involved with. So here are the observations, and you can see we've got an awful lot around the island here. And if you want, you can actually see them. I can show you. So there they are. And so this is what you don't like to see. A lot of these are old observations that people have just put up. There's one from 2 days ago. I don't know if that looks like it's a very happy one. And some of the photos that you're going to see will show this sort of some of the difficulties. But it looks like here's a number of underwater photos of them. Some very nice ones indeed. Look, there's a very nice one. And so you can click on that, look at it if you want. So here it is. It was uploaded by Sarah Ellison. You can see it's from Saturna. You can zoom in and see where it was, just offshore. And she has said what it is, and somebody else has come in and agreed with her. So because there's been an agreement, somebody basically hit the agree button, that means that its color will turn green, meaning that it's research grade, so-called research grade, meaning that it's been verified because at least 2 people agree that that's what it is. So you see there's a very much an interactive community approach here where people can see your observation and they can agree or disagree and offer an alternative. And I know in my experience, it's always very positive. People are incredibly helpful. So if I get something wrong, people will often include a little link to a website or tell me what the key feature is that I missed. And it can be, very, very helpful. Always very, very positive experiences here. So I'll show you how that observation got to be there in a second. We'll make a couple of our own. But that's, again, I'm just in the explore button. So we explored some sun stars. These are in Canada, what have been uploaded more recently. And so there's a number of things. Some of these are old photos that people have just uploaded recently. And so, and I can, restrict it to, I can restrict it to a smaller area if I want to. So there's Vancouver, and you can see here, here's the map. This is what's been uploaded to Greater Vancouver. And again, I could click on any of these random points and it'll show me the photo and it'll show me the observation. So it's a wonderful tool, and you can filter by different taxa. So I hit filter now, and I could look at introduced species in Vancouver. There, well, let's just do it. There they are. Those are introduced species. That's kind of depressing, isn't it? Or we could look at threatened species, and there they are. Okay, so there's lots and lots, obviously there's lots of overlap in these dots, or I could just look at, let's look at whatever that is, a spider. So these are this will show us spiders in Vancouver. Oh, I must have still take the threatened tag off it, and there they are. So lots and lots of observations, and you can play around, and here it shows you the most recently uploaded one. Somebody likes zebra jumping spiders. Everybody likes jumping spiders. So that's the explore button, and I'd certainly encourage you to explore it. The next one I'm going to show you is your observations. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a nice way to see what you've seen and where. Here, this is basically shows my sabbaticals over the years. I think I'm due for another one. And again, you could filter it. You could say, oh, well, what are the threatened species I've seen? And I could use my filter button there. One way I use it is I use it as a way to remind myself of species. So for example, suppose at this time of year, we're starting to get our very first butterflies out. I always forget how to distinguish some of them. So I could say, suppose there's a blues, okay? So these are Lycaenidae. So I'm looking at the Lycaenidae that I've seen everywhere. Let's keep it in British Columbia. Oops, it corrects my typos, there they are. And we can make a list, and I can I've seen 15 species apparently, and there they are. And so that way, when I see my first blue of the season, I can already guess which one it'll be based on the flight time. But if you get mixed up about things like that the way I do, then here's a quick side-by-side comparison. And it's listed from the ones that I've seen the most often, like silvery blue, to things that I've seen the least often, like this glaucon blue. So for me, it's a great memory tool just to quickly remember what I've seen. And because often, if you're like me, you'll see something, you say, oh, I saw something like that in, you know, such and such a park or whatever. And then you can very quickly get to the photo and then jog your memory as to what exactly you saw. So the last button I'm going to show you before we try some uploads is community. You can look up people, you can look up projects, and the projects is a key thing that I want you to see. A project, in most cases, is a geographical area that summarizes all the observations that have been seen inside of it. It doesn't have to be a geographical area. You can have a project on, you know, the blues of British Columbia, but most often it's a geographical area. And so I'm going to search for one. Let's look at Goldstream Park, Provincial Park. So here it is. It comes up as it's offered to us. And this is a site. This is the project. They call it a project. This is the site that gathers together automatically all of the photographs that have ever been uploaded from Goldstream. And so we created these projects as part of our collaboration with BC Parks. By we, I mean Brian and I, and Andrew Simon, who was affiliated with our program. And you can see that 6,000 and some observations have been made in Goldstream, just over 1,000 species by 300 people. And here's the leaderboard. It shows that automatically. Thomas Barbin lives in Victoria. He was actually a member of our iNaturalist team last year. Extraordinary macro photographer. And so you can see where people sit on that. This is what I always get a kick out of. Look at the map of Goldstream. Looks like there's a few inaccessible, probably high elevation places people haven't gotten to, or there's just no trails there. But again, I could, you know, click on any one of these random points. Here's a Western sword fern, which somebody has agreed with, so it's research grade. So the point is that most of these observations are by people who didn't necessarily even know the program, that the project existed. It's an open collection of observations. You don't have to join it. You don't have to sign up for it or anything like that. As long as you have uploaded something and mapped it, which you need to do, it will find it. And so as soon as we created these projects, they were already populated with a certain number of observations. The one other thing that's great about projects is that that's a basic project, but we also have umbrella projects. And this brings me to BC Parks. An umbrella project, it brings all the normal projects under one umbrella. So here's BC Parks. I'll only spend a little bit of time on this because Brian's got some slides to dig into it, but I'll just show it to you. What this does is it links together all of the other projects. It'll take a second to load because we have so many projects under it, just over 1,000 projects. And you can see that as of today, right now, we've got almost 5,000 people have contributed to it. Eventually, the number of observations and species will fill in, and Brian has a recent slide on that, so I won't really worry about that too much. But just to say that this is the umbrella project. It has all the other ones inside it listed according to how many observations they have, and you can see we just passed the 7,000 species mark in BC Parks. So if you upload a photo or an audio anywhere in any provincial protected area, it shows up here as well as in the individual project that is in the geographic region that you're in. So what I'm going to do then is the last thing I'm going to say about iNat here is in every page you go to, there's an upload button. So let's do it. We'll hit upload, and I like to load from my laptop. You can do it straight from your phone if you want to using the app. I prefer to fiddle with them on my laptop and maybe crop them, edit them, put names on them usually before I upload them, but you don't have to. And so for that, I've got a, and I don't know if you can see, whoops, a second here. What did I just do? You may not be able to see it coming, but you can see it says drag and drop. Can you see my folder now? Can you see them? Okay, great. So I select them all. So these are ones I took a few days ago. It says today because I just put them in a folder today. And so I select them all and I drag them over and I drop them. And now iNat will start to upload those photos. These were taken with my phone, and my location services was turned on, which means that the data for where I was will go with it automatically. So while we wait a second for these to upload, I just want to point out, it knew I was in Vancouver. I haven't typed that. I did type that bottom part. That was, I did type that in aggregate I just used my Mac Photos library. But look at this. If we click on it, there are the locations. So these are from Pinecone Burke Provincial Park. It's mapped them. Okay, I didn't have to do that because it took the location data because my notification services was on. So it maps them automatically. And it's taking a little while. Now, iNat's been a little slow the last 2 days. Probably, I think it only happens when I'm giving seminars, actually, because I gave one yesterday. It took a little while as well. But the other thing I'll just point out is that it's got the date and the time, right? So there you go. It's the 10th of April that I took these photos, that I took that particular photo. So I haven't had to type in any of that information. And so you can take quite a few and drag and drop them, as quickly as in large numbers if you want to. And you can even open multiple tabs and have several different tabs going where it's loading, which would be a nice thing to do in a moment like this because these are taking a bit of time. What I'm going to do is I actually don't need to wait. Because I didn't put names on any of them. So let's just look at one of these. There it is. So many of you will recognize this is Pacific silver fir or what's the other name that I forgot what Pojar and Mckeon call it.
Amabilis fir.
Pardon? Amabilis fir. That's right. That's the other name for it. Thanks, Brian. iNat has some different names, but it's that's the species, and so. I'm going to say I don't know what it is because I haven't put a name. So I'm going to click on species name. It might be able to do this even before it has finished uploading. I think it will actually offer some suggestions in a minute. There you go. It says, we're pretty sure it's in this genus, Abies, and its first suggestion, its top suggestion is that it is Pacific silver fir, okay? And partly because it's been seen nearby. If it's not that, then it thinks it's grand fir, which it would have been if I'd been in Victoria. And so it has used artificial intelligence to recognize the species and to give me suggestions as to what it is. Suppose I'm not convinced or I don't know anything about Pacific silver fir. One thing you want to know is, well, is it even found in the region? So I can go over here and click view. Let's look at it. So this will take me to a page devoted to Pacific silver fir. And there you go. There's various views of it. This is when people have been iNatting it. And we can just go to the map. There you go. So it's found there. It's in range. Okay. If it's only found in Japan, it's probably not what it is unless I think somebody planted it. So using that is a handy thing to view it and learn a bit more about it. So I've accepted that it's Pacific silver fir. Okay. Now this is the same tree. I just
Uh-oh, I think we've lost John. Well, while we wait for him to come back, I can take it from here if people can hear me. I think what he's going to do is show that what you can do in these situations is you can actually combine more than one photo. So you can take two photos like this, and you can pull them together so that you have multiple photos of the same individual or the same tree, for example, so that you can show with Pacific silver fir those very characteristic underside of the needle, so that all of those things are available. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that that people could hear me. So since we've lost John, maybe what I'll do is I'll share my screen and go on. He was probably within a couple of minutes of finishing up there. Before I do, though, does anyone have any questions about the upload process that John was talking about? And I'll just text John to know that to let him know that we lost him. No questions? Okay. Well, I will. I'll move on then to talk a little bit about our project in particular, the BC Parks iNaturalist project that we've been doing in collaboration with BC Parks and with the BC Parks Foundation and a number of other people to document, as John's pointed out, biodiversity within provincial protected areas. So this is only about the provincial protected areas, although there are other organizations that also have projects like this to collect observations in, say, national parks, for example. And actually, I've just opened up the chat and I see that Rosemary has a question about how do you make the initial download. And Rosemary, we can wait for John to come back and maybe answer all of those questions at the end if that would make sense. Is that okay?
Hey, Brian, I'm actually back.
Okay.
So I should apologize to iNaturalist for blaming their website for being slow. It looks like I was slow. We don't need to go. You can keep going. I was just about finished. So the initial download, Rosemary, I simply downloaded from my phone onto my laptop. And you can do that in whatever, it depends on what kind of phone and what kind of laptop you have. In my case, I have an iPhone and a Mac. And so I just AirDrop to my laptop, but you can do it with a cord, with a cable. And if you're taking it from a camera, a real camera, same thing. You can use whatever method you usually want to use. And the answer to Emelita's question is, if you you don't have to use location on your phone. If you can map it yourself, if your phone if your phone doesn't have location services or you don't want to. So you can, on the upload page, I could have mapped it and it's pretty fast. You can just type the general location, it takes you straight to it, and then you can put it wherever it belongs. Yeah, are there any other quick questions just on the upload phase? As I said, I was pretty much finished, so it wasn't a bad time for my internet to let me down. Okay, so maybe I'll turn it back to you, Brian.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll go on from what John was talking about in terms of how we work with projects. And so we've put together for each of the protected areas, the provincial protected areas in British Columbia, a single project, an individual, what's called a collection project. We started doing this about this time 2 years ago in the spring of 2019 when we were discussing this project with BC Parks. Wouldn't it be nice to have an opportunity to go out and use this opportunity of community or citizen science to collect more observations of species, of biodiversity all across the province, but especially in protected areas that in many cases are often undersampled, are remote, but yet are some of BC's most beautiful locations, most beloved landscapes, and lots of people visit them. So as John mentioned, we were able to go in and work with a handful of people, including Andrew Simon, to pull together the boundaries of all of the 1,000, there were 1,033 at that point, but now 100 or 1,034 provincial protected areas around the province, upload those boundaries that are in KML format. If you know that format from Google Earth, we can circle back to exactly how we do this later. But we can upload those boundaries as a place. So we create a place, and then from each of those places, we're able to create these projects. And the projects simply take the spatial boundary of the location and make a project that collects automatically every single observation that's made within that boundary. So every observation that's made within the Hakai-Lux Belize Conservancy or Goldstream Park, you don't have to do anything to add it to this project. If your observation was made within the bounds of those protected areas, it's automatically included. So when we first did this at the beginning, as John mentioned, iNaturalist has been around for just over 10 years. It was developed as a master's project at the University of California, Berkeley. It's really grown, as he's pointed out, especially since 2018. When we started this, there were about 18,000 observations of over 2,700 species made by about 1,000 observers across the province. So this is in May of 2019, before we started our first field season. we've had 2 field seasons where we've hired a series of students to do what is probably everybody on this call's dream job, which is just to travel around to protected areas, provincial parks and so on, around BC and hike all day and take hundreds of photos of every single species, every organism that you can find, and then upload them. So after doing this for a couple of summers, we've had a couple of teams of 4 that have gone out, and we're just prepping to have a team of 6 go out. We had grown by about 258,000 observations in under 2 years. So this is where we're at today, just over 275,000 observations of over 7,000 species. But crucially, these other 2 numbers are really, really important. There are almost 5,000 people who have contributed to this project, this big, what's called the umbrella project. So the project that is for every single, all 1,034 of those provincial parks. And I noticed of the people in the chat or on the call, many of you have contributed to that, either as an observer or in some cases as the so-called identifier of species, that when you upload a species before it is confirmed by someone else, it's just sitting there as an observation waiting to be identified. And then when somebody comes in and identifies it as, for example, Darren Copley might come in and ID some spiders, or James Mckeon with some grasshoppers, to bring those things to research grade. It's a huge, really lovely community, very positive community. And in this case of over 4,600 identifiers of species. And this is really remarkable. So here's a map that's just taken right off of the iNaturalist website that shows all of in orange, in light orange here, orangey yellow, you can see the outlines of parks like Spatsizi Plateau or Northern Rocky Mountains Provincial Park. And each of the dark orange squares represents at least one observation, in many cases, hundreds or even thousands of observations within those parks. So this is the general spatial coverage of observations that have been made in those protected areas, provincial protected areas around the province. And you can get a sense of which parks are being visited most often. As we mentioned, there are over 1,000 of these different projects. In some cases, some of them combined together if there's an adjacent provincial park and an ecological reserve. But you can see popular parks like Strathcona Provincial Park have over 13,000 observations, and so on, which is really wonderful. And many of you have contributed to this. The iNaturalist app is really neat on your phone. You can do that parlor trick of being out in nature and taking a photo of something on your phone and using the artificial intelligence of the photo recognition software to give you an ID and show somebody right away that you're looking at Salal, for example, if they don't know how to identify that. But there are a number of other really great things that the website does. And one of them, so for example, this is one of our collection projects for an individual park on Haida Gwaii, so Naikoo Agate Beach and Misty Meadows Provincial Park. And when you click on the observations, for example, you can see all of the observations. You can see the map, as John showed, of where each of those individual observations is made. You can see who did it. You can see who's identifying the observations. But also, if you click on the species, you get this really lovely, effectively a field guide to all of the species that you might be able to see in a place like this. Say you're planning a trip there, or it's COVID time like right now, and we're all dreaming about being able to visit a place like Haida Gwaii. We can actually kind of travel vicariously here and see what people have seen in this place, and think about seeing our beach glennia or round-leaf sundew and semi-palmated plovers and so on there. One of the really great things about iNaturalist is just what a wonderful tool it is for observing all nature. It's not restricted to a single taxa. It doesn't do just plants or spiders or snakes. You can upload any observation of any living thing that you're interested in, and it's really great. So, for example, here's a satin flower that I uploaded from Mill Hill, an observation that I made on the weekend. So you can upload things like that that might be common around Victoria. I'm not originally from Victoria, so for me to see a range map like this for something that's so restricted to Victoria, that's a really interesting thing for me to understand more about the biodiversity or the botany of the Pacific Northwest. There are other things that can be done, like, for example, Gary Fletcher's observation of a past record of a rare liverwort called frost crystal wort that he made. Other people are using it because they're really interested in, for example, snakes. And this is a really wonderful observation from the North Okanagan of a rattlesnake that's crossing the road. And you can see that rather than the specific location like this, well, let's say like the satin flower right here, it's actually in a box. So it's obscured so that the true location of rare or threatened or otherwise at-risk species isn't shown if they're at risk, for example, of being collected as rattlesnakes are in some places. It can also make other interesting observations of undersampled species like this Habernatus sansoni that Thomas Barbin made. Of course, he's a wonderful photographer, so he takes great photos, but he also has a keen eye for things like this millipede that's infected with with an invertebrate iridovirus. And what's really neat about this is that there was a lot of back and forth with an iridovirus expert about whether or about what genus of virus this might be. You can also upload these observations that you wouldn't have gone out necessarily to plan to make, or that are just kind of interesting and fun. So here's a picture of John, for example, having rescued a hooded merganser that had gotten trapped on a road and couldn't take off. So as John describes right here, he picked up the hooded merganser, drove one-handed to the nearest body of water, rescue mission successful, and he helpfully points out that the duck is here on the left.
How do you find that page?
Which page is it that you're interested in?
That last page with the species and its range.
With the species and its range. Okay, sure. So if you, for example, go to, we'll just use satin flower because it's in the middle of in the middle of the screen here. If you go to iNaturalist.ca and you go to the search function, just type in satin flower, or what iNaturalist often calls grass widow, which is an American common name, or Alsinium douglasii, and it will take you to a page, a specific page for satin flower, for Alsinium, that will show you all of the observations and gives you a map of its of the range of all of the observations.
Thanks.
Sure. So you can see one of the interesting things about iNaturalist is that it provides us with this opportunity to document species that tend to be overlooked or tend to not typically have too many observations. So, for example, this common script lichen, 2 years ago there were very few observations, and of course, as iNaturalist grows, the number of observations greatly increases. I'm just going to let's see. I see there are a number of different questions here. Yeah, I wonder if it would just make sense to wait until the end to tackle most of those, as I see that the John has mentioned here. Is that okay with folks?
Yeah, we can go through them all, I think, one by one. And Brian, I think that sounds like a good plan.
Sure. Yeah, we'll leave plenty of time for that discussion. Those are all great questions.
Yeah.
So you can see other things too, like these grigs, which is something I've learned a lot more about from James Miskelly over the last few years, but it's not something that I knew anything at all about. And you can see they're infrequently observed in the past, but as iNaturalist grows in popularity and more people are out there making more observations, we get a much better idea of where these things are within BC and can make some pretty interesting observations. Similarly, for other things that we know pretty well, in terms of the things that we may go out and look for, many of us are interested in butterflies and moths. You can see that you can set up, for example, moth lights, and we send our field team out into the field now with portable moth lights to do mothing at night. But then, of course, we've also got some really wonderful things like this elfin that these observations continue to pour in to much better understand distributions of species in BC and greatly increase the number of observations of different species from just over 200 2 years ago to now over 600. With the website as well, we haven't talked very much about the data, but the data are actually really wonderful and relatively easy to work with as scientists. They have some biases, of course, to where people are traveling. We've been able to show, for example, that over 80% of the observations that are made in British Columbia are made within about 250 meters of a road. And so there are biases with the spatial distribution that are decreasing over time as more and more people get out there and use it. But we can do things like map, for example, where threatened species are within BC parks and greatly increase our knowledge of threatened species around the province. And we can do similar things, as John pointed out earlier in his little demo, for things like introduced species as well, so invasives. And we've worked with invasive species biologists in BC as well to set up projects for quick detection of things like garlic mustard, for example, that if it's detected early might be removable, which is a very good thing for helping to deal with invasive species around the province. And the team that we've hired is a really wonderful group of students, mostly UVic students, although as INAC grows, more and more people are using it around the world. As John pointed out, over 1.5 million users. They all have their different things that they're good at in terms of observations, for example, of things like intertidal species like this abalone, or of the little critters that we love and that we sometimes struggle to get good photos of, but people like Kate and Thomas are really excellent at this. Or Jason is an excellent observer of all kinds of different things. So the team is really excited about getting out and taking lots of photos of as many different species as possible. And going to frankly, some of the most biodiverse and interesting parts of the province to find things that in many cases are endangered or threatened, like lark sparrows or this brown-spotted range grasshopper, or just plain old weird that we don't often see, like mantid flies or this robber fly that in many cases our team is not always composed of experts on every single species, but experts like Rob Cannings can take this down from family, rate this species, which is really remarkable. So for the summer, we have 2 teams of 3 people that are set to go following in these incredibly complex COVID protocols that we've got, with all kinds of physical distancing and multiple vehicles and so on, to go out and survey not just in BC parks, but also beyond. We're also working with FLNRORD, the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations, to figure out how to use data like this in better understanding and managing provincial wildlife. This summer, we have a real emphasis on threatened species or small species, obscure, the uncharismatic species that tend to be undersampled. And our goal is to get to 500,000 observations in the BC Parks project from 275,000 observations at the moment. We have quite a detailed trip plan. We've planned this out very, very carefully, actually over months, to work slowly expanding where we go to do our surveys, and to avoid some places, of course, that we don't want to visit because of threats to local populations or First Nations, for example. So we'll start out on southern Vancouver Island, moved to the South Okanagan, an area sort of centered around the Duffy Lake Road and so on, to a big trip in northern BC and then to the Kootenays. And as it's planned, we'll hit just over 100 parks this summer on a total of 105 field days, that works out to over 600 person days in the field. John, do you want to take it from here on these slides?
Sure. Yes, so I've tried to get closer to my router again, and then, as I said at the end, we'll be happy to go through some of the go through the chat. So, well, essentially, it's a matter of anybody can participate, and as we've said, all you have to do is upload the photo, and we will find you. They will find their way into these park projects, and so basically, you see it, photograph it, and upload it. And you can do it from your phone directly if you would like, or you can do it the way I did from the laptop. And so whenever I go out, I always seem to have my phone anyway. And if I, just take the odd interesting random photo is one way to go. You don't have to work the way our summer team do, which is to take hundreds a day. And basically, you really need to have fun. Do you want to carry on, Brian? I think we've got. It's oh yes, an ID, of course, with the help of iNat. But this is fun for us, and so I think that's one reason why it kind of works for so many people. If you're into photography, you're all into the outdoors. You're obviously into natural history. It's for many of us, it's just a collision of a bunch of hobbies that all kind of come together under this one roof, and so we really, in addition to the help we're providing to BC Parks and to our understanding of the distributions of threatened species and various other conservation and management benefits, fundamentally, it's also very much can be a very enjoyable hobby. Next. And one thing we wanted to tell you about was this wonderful pocket gallery display at the Royal BC Museum, which is basically showcases the collaboration that we've had, and that shows how this project works. A lot of our photos are in there, and it talks about this our citizen science, community science program. So that is continuing to run at the museum right now, and certainly would encourage you. I haven't been able to get across to see it yet. I'm stuck isolated in the lower mainland for now, but certainly would encourage you to take advantage of that and go and have a look at it. Next, Brian.
Yeah, I would just add too that this is a really great example of collaboration with the Royal BC Museum too, and the folks who work there and are also out collecting, and that we're really looking forward to spending a bunch of time with RBCM folks in the field this year, which really benefits our team because they learn from the expertise at the museum and can learn to better ID and even search for things, which is really great. Yeah,
indeed. So just an acknowledgement here. First of all, we have a number of funders and collaborators, and BC Parks, of course, are our primary partner, and we work very closely with them, and it's been a real joy working with them. They join us in the field. It's just been a total pleasure, and people from the BC Parks Foundations have been helping with our engagement and outreach, and we've had funding from the Sitka Foundation and the Pacific Wildlife Foundation as well. And so this is the team from last summer, and the very friendly dog was only with us for one day, unfortunately. He adopted us when we arrived at the middle of nowhere. And but I do want to point out Jason and Kate here. Kate Mckeon, many of you have met her at least virtually, if not in person, because she is our program coordinator. So she was a summer worker, and has also been instrumental in helping basically herd us all together and get plans going. So Lena and Jason are joining us again this summer. Thomas will join us, we hope, at least for some period of time, and we have a couple of new people joining us. So so we are very grateful to the wonderful team that we've worked with, as well as the parks people. And in terms of social distancing, they're in one bubble, which they worked out right from the beginning after isolation. And he is 2 meters from him, 2 meters from me. The dog, not so much. And Thomas off to the side as well. It's going to be more of the same, I'm afraid, this year. So I think that's that. And what we could do then is have a quick look at the chat. We can take turns, Brian. I thought I might just quickly answer Anne's question about the obscuring of locations, if you like.
Please do.
Okay, so so the way it works, Anne, is that the Conservation Data Center in Victoria, which are the provincial biologists who are responsible for maintaining records, and I know you know this, but for those who don't know, they maintain the records of species across the province of plants and animals, and especially dealing with the database of threatened species. They have a list, and the list is of species that they feel could be subject to harm if their locations are known. That doesn't mean it's every threatened species. There are lots of threatened species that are listed, that are on their provincial, have some sort of provincial status, which aren't likely to come to harm. But it could be things like rattlesnakes, which, whether they're threatened or not, some people don't like them, and you don't really want to give away locations of them. So they have that list, and that list, it goes to iNaturalist, and iNaturalist therefore automatically obscures the location when of that subset of species whenever somebody puts one in. Now, you asked the question of whether they hide the actual location. What they do is they put a box around it, which is it's of the order of maybe, I don't know, 20 kilometers by 30 or so kilometers, and then they put the dot in a random location within the box. So it's in there somewhere, but good luck trying to find a tailor's checker spot using iNaturalist because it's obscured. And so that's how it works. So they can have access to the actual information, which is good for planning and so on, but the general public doesn't get it.
Right. So John, the reason I asked the question is that there has been some concern amongst naturalists. The box makes total sense. They do the same thing for birds that are sensitive on eBird, right? So it's somewhere in that box. Yep. But the fact that a point is designated has been really confusing to some of the people that have been using it. So they go, holy crap, it's the first one ever on Thetis Island, right? Because that dot ended up on Thetis Island. So even with the explanation that the dot doesn't mean that's where it was, it's really easy to misinterpret that. So is there any reason to have the dot there? Could you not just use the bounding box?
I think they probably could. It's not, that's an iNaturalist thing, and it's a good question. It would be a good one to put to the forum. I will say though that the dot is different. So the dot is sort of blurry and fuzzy inside the box if it's an obscured location. If it's an actual one, it'll be a precise pin. Right. So there is actually a difference, but I don't expect people to generally know that. And so I take your point, and I have had people raise the same question where they thought, they said, well, what's this species doing? It just can't possibly be there. Maybe like for Gulf Island species, it'll take a lot of the Gulf Island plants and stick them in the ocean, right? Because that's in the thing. And but when you look at it, that's the answer. So I don't really know why they bother with the dot at all. I think that is actually a very good point. Yeah. So I saw. Let me just a quick couple more in the. Let's catch up. Maybe Josh. I'm just going to catch up in the chat, and then we can. Oh yeah. So iNaturalist and Seek. Brian, which of us knows more about Seek? Neither of us use it much.
No, I've used it a little bit because I have a son who was very into Pokemon Go, for example, for a while, which is that famous app on your phone where you hold it up to your face and you walk around capturing Pokemon that show up on your camera in different places around where you're walking. And so Seek is a little bit like that. It's in a sense, it is iNaturalist that is real time. So you just open up the camera and you spin around with your phone, and it in real time, as you're looking through your camera, it tells you the identification of the species as you pass by a Doug fir, and then a grand fir, and then an arbutus. But it also gives you a list of the common species where you're found. And so for kids, it's often really great. And it's what I recommend to schools when they ask me about using iNaturalist. It's really great because it's like a treasure hunt for the students. It is affiliated with iNaturalist. and it does do effectively the same thing.
Yeah, great. And I'm going to tackle the loaded question that Louise has asked us. How do we use these data to persuade the government that we need an Endangered Species Act? For what it's worth, Brian and I have tried. We were part of a fairly large group of biologists who made a pitch for what an Endangered Species Act could look like and why there should be one. And it's evidently not on the cards. We were quite disappointed to find out that this was not likely to happen. So anyway, there is a there is a document. It's out there. We published it with, again, we didn't lead this thing. Other people led the project, and yes, it's hard to. I don't know if Brian's got anything else to add to a loaded question.
Well, I actually think that one of the most powerful things that we can do to convince people that BC has got a problem with endangered species and so on is to actually put it out there that we have all of these endangered species. Use tools like iNaturalist to get more people interested in making observations of endangered species and see them for themselves and feel as though they have ownership over some of our province's understanding of where these things are and what they are. So I like iNaturalist for that. I like that aspect of it, that it's a little bit subversive in a sense, that it's putting this data out there that is that you can't dispute in a sense. It's like, if you look at the map of Mckeon's meadow foam, well, there's all that big cloud of obscured locations right over the city of Victoria. So, it's important Mckeon's meadow foam habitat. I think that that's important. I'm not sure, Louise, I can get more specific about that, but I'd be very happy to take a walk with you in Helliwell or something at some point, INAT together, and talk about it. That would be great.
And Josh had his hand up. I don't know if it's still up. Are you still out there, Josh?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Great presentation, by the way. I really enjoyed it. I was curious about two things. If you find a posted online, is there easy way to get a hold of it if you're a researcher trying to get that information, like more information other than all that long data, very detailed, other than the general post?
I didn't get a lot of that, I'm afraid. Josh, you were kind of breaking up. Is it possible to pop it into the chat? Sorry, or you could try again. You came in for a while, but we lost you.
Yeah. Is it possible with some post observation on iNaturalist, that's a rare animal? Is there a way to get a hold of that of your research that get more information?
Josh, I think you're going to have to put that in the chat, but in the meantime, while you're doing that, maybe we could answer your other question that you asked earlier about how one would create their own project. And so we could answer, John, maybe you could talk about that while Josh puts his current question into the chat.
Sure. So creating a project is actually surprisingly straightforward. And so there are these, I mentioned the three main tabs. There's one called More, and I think it's under More, isn't it? Anyway, create a project is Brian's probably trying it right now while I speak, but you basically, you can create a new project. There's a tab for create a new project, and then you can give it a name. You can type in a blurb about it, put a photo on, and then if it's a project for an area that is already a geographically recognized location, so it could be, let's say it's the mammals of British Columbia. Maybe you want that to be your project. Then BC, it already knows where British Columbia is, and you can just write that in, and it'll map it automatically. And so that would take about, if you know what you're doing, it takes about 20 seconds. Otherwise, if you can draw the boundaries yourself using their mapping tool, you can actually just trace the boundary. And that takes obviously a little bit more time depending on how complicated the boundary is. So there are resources online on iNat for how to do all of this. It's probably better to look those up, or if you wanted to contact us separately, we could help you rather than to try to, can't really take you through it right now, but there are really good online resources for how to do most of those things, and creating a project is actually quite intuitive.
Yeah,
There's a lot more to it. There are details and bells and whistles and things, but I'm not sure we want to go all the way into that at this stage.
Yeah, you want to look for that projects tab under your username, and then you just start a project, and away you go. It's once we figured out how to do this, I think we were saying that for each individual BC Parks project, it was taking us about 3 minutes to create the place and the project, which was pretty good.
Yeah, for me, I could do roughly 30 to 40 during one period of a Vancouver Canucks hockey game. So let's just go back in here, and so we'll come to Josh in a second here, and we were trying to get a caterpillar with antennae off their landing page. Uh-oh, am I going to have to look at this?
Yeah, it doesn't look so good. It looks like a little, yeah.
I'm trying to load it. I haven't seen it yet. Come on, Brian.
I loaded it. We'll look.
Okay,
yeah.
we'll look. While that's happening, and so Josh was asking if you want more information. Yeah, so yes, you can contact if you want to contact the observer, if that's what you're asking, Josh, that's extremely easy. You just click on their icon or their name, and it'll take you to their page, which is their profile. And even if they don't say anything about themselves, or even have a photo, you can direct message them. So you can very easily direct message a person on iNat and get that information from them. Now, the other thing we should have pointed out too is that in general, more generally, these data can be uploaded by anybody. And so researchers can very quickly and easily get the information from iNaturalist. If the locations have been obscured, then there's extra channels they would have to go through, and that may, that's the general public cannot do that. But I hope that answers your question. So I'm so curious about this this thing that's got the I'm not seeing that other one about the caterpillar with antennae, but
it's the landing page. It's a graphic designer that didn't know insects.
Okay, I was just going to say a caterpillar with antennae is an interesting concept.
Well, onychophoran, we went back and forth on Ento Twitter, and no, it's a caterpillar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like a caterpillar with wings.
I have an onychophoran from Costa Rica on iNat. It's one of my favorite observations.
There you go. So any other...
Natalie Deshane has asked, can you please remind us what the colors mean on the maps? And Natalie, is there a specific map that you were thinking of that had the different colors? Okay, so you went to Peak Holes to Mount Douglas, and there were different colors of observations, or let's see here.
I think the answer is there is a color code, and I never remember which is which unless I click on it, but usually green means it's a plant, and other colors means it could be a mammal or a vertebrate, at least, another word for invertebrates. I think, isn't that what is that what Natalie's asking about, Brian?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So I never remember which is which, but if you just click on one, you'll quickly get the idea of what those different colored dots mean. And I found it somewhat inconsistent about whether they color them or not sometimes. So I haven't quite figured out why sometimes they're not different colors.
Sure. I see Morgan Jackson has asked a question in the chat, and it's one that I think about all the time. And we're constantly looking actually for money for taxonomists to do IDs, which, quite frankly, no taxonomist is going to be shocked to hear that it's more difficult to get money to ID these things than it is to make the observations in the first place. But Morgan, this is a great question. So what do you think the iNaturalist community needs most from the relatively few people alive who can identify those taxa? Time doing IDs, keys, workshops, all of the above, or something else? entirely. And of course, that's a really difficult thing to answer. I would say time doing IDs is, of course, very, very important. And hopefully with that, it does teach people to recognize some of the things that they might need to either take better observations, better photos, and maybe even to learn the IDs. And of course, the keys and workshops are very, very important. I'm terrible with keys. John and I have spoken about this, that we're both not really wonderful at it, but some people are, and that's a really wonderful and important thing. I love the idea of workshops. And you can see that Sid, for example, has put in the chat here that Bruce Bennett at the Yukon CDC has hired experts like Darren Copley, who was on the call tonight, to identify things in the Yukon INAT. The BC Conservation Data Center has also hired people to do those same sorts of things. We work with the CDC here and there or we meet with them to talk about these things, and they've been doing that sort of thing. So I would hope actually that there is a push to put more resources into, like you said, the small number of people who can get so many of these really interesting, especially the tiny things, to species.
And it's been really interesting. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or what, but there are some experts are engaging with the platform in ways that they didn't used to. And so I've noticed that suddenly all of my butterflies have been looked at. and thanks to Crispin Guppy, who's one of, who literally wrote the book on BC butterflies. And James Miskelly has been going through grasshoppers and crickets and allies. And so, just a handful of experts can make such a huge difference to identifications. And there's someone in the Okanagan, Doug Brown, who has gone through and corrected a whole ton of mistakes that I was making with plants there. And so it's such a valuable service that people are providing, and we're all learning so much from people when they do decide to do that take it on as a project.
It's been nice too, in meetings with experts who have said, at that site you should keep an eye out for X, and then you keep going back there until you find X, and it really helps to target things that people might overlook, and that's a wonderful skill that even if people are not making observations themselves on INAT, can really help the other folks who are using INAT to make more observations. That's been really important.
Mm-hmm. So are there any other questions? Phil, I don't know if you have a cutoff time in mind, or we could go on all night. In fact, I'd be happy to go on all night, but just how are we doing? Oh, you're mute. You're mute, Phil. Mute. Phil said we have another 3 hours.
Sorry. No, it's fine.
Okay,
As
great.
long as people have questions and you're willing to stay and answer them.
Of course.
Have we answered all the ones on the chat?
I think so. Let me see.
There's some comments.
Yeah, some various comments and so on. I think we're pretty good on the chat. So if anybody, wants to unmute or whatever, and there was a mention about BioBlitzes. There's iNaturalist is the go-to platform for BioBlitzes, and there's a whole bunch of them going on. I mean, every weekend, if you wanted to, from Victoria, you could do a BioBlitz somewhere in Southern Ireland, I'm sure. And so there've been all kinds of promotional things that are going on. There's also starting soon, there's a city challenge that iNaturalist puts on, where different municipalities have a friendly competition with each other using it. So we've certainly, that's been very beneficial to general uptake and interest that people have with this platform.
I'd certainly be keen to get out into the field with folks around Victoria when we can do that more, just to talk about this and to see what people see out there and to learn more. I'm astounded by how much biodiversity we have around Victoria and how rapidly some of it's being lost. But I really love iNaturalist as a tool for mapping this stuff out, and there's lots to explore. It'd be great to, as I see Kara's put in the chat about using it more at Swan Lake, love to get out in the field with you at some point to do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, going once, twice. Thank you very much to Brian and John for very excellent presentation. I've been dabbling with it a little bit lately, and you've answered a few more questions about how to do things, so I'll be invigorated to go back and try again. So with that, I will thank both our speakers, Brian Starzomski and John Reynolds, for giving us the lowdown on iNaturalist. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much for having us, and yeah, have a great summer.
Yeah, same
everybody.
to you.
That's right. Thanks, folks. Take care.
So I'll end the meeting here. If there's a few more chats coming in, thank you.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.